Wonder Woman. Wednesday.
If you can believe it, my friends, we are getting close to the end of the first season of Wonder Woman, albeit an abbreviated half season. This is the penultimate Season 1 episode, Bushwhackers, one of the more famous episodes because 1, the great Roy Rogers, and 2, the first appearance of a brand new Wonder Woman outfit. A special episode requires an equally special guest. And you know, I like to break the rules, so this month we have a guest that is not a cosplayer, but he is incredibly knowledgeable in all things Wonder Woman. Artist, journalist, author, superfan, and provocateur. Okay, maybe not the last one. My friend, Sean McHugh. Sean and I are going to shed light on a standout episode, and we are going old school, talking by phone instead of Zoom. You're going to notice a different kind of sound quality, but listen, just sit back and pretend you're listening on the extension phone on today's episode of Wonder Woman Wednesdays.
The legendary Roy Rogers guest stars as a Texas cattle rancher beset by mob-related rustlers and a troublesome son played by Lance Kerwin. Only Wonder Woman, with the help of Steve Trevor, can save the family and the military-bound beef from the clutches of the Bushwhackers. And exciting Western music happens in the background. Probably not, but we'll see. I am talking to Sean McHugh. Sean, how's it going?
It's going great. I am thrilled to be here. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about one of the biggest inspirations in my life.
Awesome. I'm so glad to be talking to you. We'll talk more about how we met later, but just a brief description, kind of just tell folks like who you are.
Okay. My name is Sean McHugh. I'm from Maysville, Kentucky, but I'm now living in Florida where I'm a caricature artist at Walt Disney World, where I've been for 24 years. And I'm also a children's book author / illustrator. I've got a children's book series called Broomsticks that's about 2 little 9-year-old witches who, it's sort of like the flip side of Harry Potter. They go to a mortal school and nobody else knows they're witches. It's more like Bewitched than Harry Potter, that I write with my niece, Katie McHugh Parker. And I'm a huge Wonder Woman fan and have been since November 7th, 1975.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll jump into the episode, and we're going to definitely talk more about your work and that book and your fandom, all that stuff. But first, we got to talk about Roy Rogers.
Definitely.
So, this episode, The Bushwhackers, first of all, I had to look up the word bushwhacker because, like,
I did too.
From the context, I kind of know what it means, but I've heard it used a couple of different ways, and there are several definitions of it, but I believe the one that I found from Merriam-Webster that pertains to this particular episode, a bushwhacker is somebody who attacks by surprise from a hidden place, like an ambush. And a lot of that usage comes from, like, the Old West, like people who would attack stagecoaches or trains.
Right.
So that's kind of what we're talking about. This episode is very, it's like they're doing like a Western version of Wonder Woman. Like this is kind of like the first episode. They're doing kind of a genre thing. It feels like, because all of a sudden we're in the Old West, with Roy Rogers, one of the great, Western stars. So very cool, very cool. So that's what a bushwhacker is. And so the first thing we see, obviously, is the credits in the episode. And we see that Stuart Margolin is our director. Mm-hmm. And he directed one episode of Wonder Woman previously, The Last of the $2 Bills. And I believe Susan and I, when we talked about that, gave him kind of a hard time in a few places. We just blamed him for anything that went wrong in that episode. But he is a wonderful actor from the 70s. He did the Rockford Files, and he was on a couple of episodes of MASH. And I did not know until I did that last episode, the $2 bills one, that he was a director. And he's been directing since he did Love American Style. He got to do 1 or 2 episodes of that, and I guess he's just always wanted to direct as well as act.
Wow. I didn't even know. Yeah, I didn't know any of that.
Are you familiar with Stuart Margolin?
Not really, just his name on the credits. I'm not really familiar with his acting.
Yeah, you might recognize. I mean, you know.
Oh, I'm sure I'd see. I know his face.
Yeah, because he's been in so many different things.
Yeah.
And the writer of the episode is Skip Webster, and he's done a lot of work too. He did some of his more long-term work. He did like 12 episodes of The Rookies, 24 episodes of Fantasy Island, and 12 episodes of Matt Houston. So he's been around.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I appreciated. I'll talk more about it later, but I really appreciated the writing of this episode. I remembered this episode being kind of kitschy, and it's like, you know, let's use kids to give it a cute factor. But watching it again, I was really surprised at. I felt like it was kind of layered, you know, like there was a lot more going on in the script than I remembered.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite. It's not. I don't think it's the best episode or most exciting episode, but it's one of the most unique episodes, and that's one of the reasons I love it so much. Yeah.
Now, what? Other than, you know, we talked a little bit about how, you know, it's a Western, so there's kind of a different genre vibe to it. But are there other things about it that you know come out as unique in terms of the you know the sort of overall arc of Wonder Woman?
For me, it's a personal thing because it's like it's my go-to episode for like comfort food, because the story with Charlie and the kids, that gets to me, because at the same time this episode aired, my friends and I had a Teen Titans Club, and we wanted to be junior superheroes. So the whole last act where Charlie and his gang help save Wonder Woman, that gets me every time.
Yeah.
And I think it's great. It was a great episode for kids watching it at the time, because we get to go save Wonder Woman.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was wondering, because I didn't remember the whole thing the first time I rewatched it for this podcast, and I'm like, how are those kids going to get her out of that jail?
Right.
And they come up with a good solution. We'll get to it. I should try to stick to my. You know, I like to go through this chronologically, but it's hard not to sort of jump around. So the opening, we get this old timey Texas map, and there's sort of an overlay of cattle running around, and then it sort of dissolves to Lance Kerwin riding a horse. It's a great shot of him riding. He's got some speed. He's riding with determination, and he gets to the Diamond H ranch house, and that's where Roy Rogers is doing his thing. You know, right off the bat, he's got these kids around him, and he's teaching them how to lasso.
Pay very close attention now, because I'm going to tie you a bowline knot. First, you form a loop like that. Then you take this end of the rope through the hole, over the top, and back through, and you cinch it up real tight. And it forms a knot that won't slip. You can make a loop like this and tie it with a bowline, and it'll hold real tight. It's good for fires, mountain climbing, and water accidents. You want to give it a try, Charlie?
And I guess, you know, since we get so many folks in this one scene, we're just going to go right into talking about their backgrounds. Of course, Lance Kerwin, I recognize him as James at 15 or James at 16, depending on how you remember it. But I mostly watched the first season. Well, I did watch the second season. I was kind of waiting for James at 17. I remember that, but it never came about. So that was a bummer. But he's been around since I think his first credit was Emergency in '74. Mm-hmm. But he did Shazam, Little House on the Prairie, Gunsmoke. He did 5 ABC after school specials. Yeah. And which is amazing. I didn't know they would have a regular actor. But I guess that's maybe how they did that. They had like a team of people and they did all these different specials. Yeah. He did Bionic Woman, Salem's Lot, and Enemy Mine. I think one of his last credits was either Murder, She Wrote or Outbreak. I think Outbreak was the last one in '95. Yeah. And he dropped out of acting in '95 to get clean and sober. He'd been having some challenges with substance abuse, and he stayed out of acting for a long time. He actually lived on an LA recovery ranch. He did a couple of missionary trips overseas, and actually became an ordained minister in 2006. And he returned to acting in 2022 with one movie, The Wind and the Reckoning, which I looked at the trailer for this movie because I'd never heard of it, and it looked awesome. It looked amazing. It sort of takes place in Hawaii when either pirates or colonists first come to the island, and so there's this conflict immediately between the people who live there and the people visiting, and it just looks incredible, and so this was his movie, I guess, to come back to acting, but unfortunately he passed away in 2023. Right. So just recently. Yeah. So that's Lance Kerwin. Now you mentioned that you watched James at 15 or 16. Yeah.
I think I was like you. I don't remember too much of James at 16, but I think I watched every episode at 15. I don't know if they switched days and it was on the same time as something else I watched or not.
Yeah, maybe. I guess I always thought it was like, for some reason I have it in my head that it's an 80s show, but it was in the 70s, so maybe I was watching it in syndication or something. Right. But anyway, so that's Lance Kerwin. And, of course, Roy Rogers. He's just an American icon. He's a singer, actor, TV host, rodeo performer. He was nicknamed King of the Cowboys, and he had a radio show. He had a TV show, the Roy Rogers TV show. He was in almost 90 films. He was in a whole bunch of them. Wow. And he often appeared with his wife Dale Evans and his golden Palomino horse Trigger. And he's best remembered for his signature song Happy Trails. Yeah. And I got to tell you, I don't remember specifically ever seeing any particular Roy Rogers movie or TV show as a kid, but as far as I can remember, I've always known who he is.
Right. Yeah, he was an icon. I mean, same with me. I don't remember any reruns of the show when I was a kid, but I've seen him since then. Like it seems like they started showing him in the 90s for some reason, but they were great. But I don't remember any when I was a kid.
Yeah. Yeah, but you just always knew. I've always known Happy Trails.
Yeah. I knew the song. I knew him and Dale, and there's so many references to him and Dale in all the movies and TV shows and stuff. So you just knew who he was. Yeah, incredible. So, and just quickly, the household, we haven't met her quite yet, but Maria is his housekeeper, and she's played by Rita Gomez. She has 26 credits on IMDb, so she's been busy, including 87 episodes of The Bold and the Beautiful as Maria Martinez. Wow. And so as far as the kids go, so there's one little girl. Her name is Christelle Pirette Gaspar. She plays Babette, and she has, appropriately, because she has a very French name. Yeah, I was going to say, she actually is French.
Yeah, I couldn't tell, because some of these kids, like there's a little British boy, and I kind of suspect he's an American boy, putting on a British accent, right. But he does a nice job. But she I guess, is French. It's hard to say because that is her only credit. Like, this is the only thing she's done, at least as far as the IMDb is concerned. So,
well, she did a good job.
Yeah. So there's an Asian boy played by Kerry Wong. His name is Sen in the show, and he's got 5 credits. The Streets of San Francisco, Brady Bunch, and Chips are just a couple of those credits. Freddie, who is the British boy, he's played by Justin Randy, and he's got a few credits on the IMDb, including he was a co-star in Thunder, which was a TV show about a horse named Thunder. And he was in Oh God Book 2. And the reason I mention that is because Charlie Bright Eagle, the Native American boy, is played by David Yanez. He was also in Oh God Book 2. He worked a little bit more than some of the other kids. He was in $6 Million Man, Fish, Beretta, Fantasy Island, and he was in something called the Goose Hill Gang, which was a series of videos. I'm not sure exactly what it is, maybe something like Goosebumps. But as he got older, he appeared in things like Malibu Bikini Shop, Born in East LA, and then for some reason he takes a 20-year break, and then he shows up in one movie in 2007 called For Amour. And I tried to look into, why he dropped out of acting. I found a sort of faith-healing preacher that had the same name, and I couldn't tell if it was him. But
I did too. I don't think it's him, but I couldn't tell for sure.
Right, because he's about the right age. This kid is my age, basically. In fact, he was born in 67, and so he'd be in his 50s right now. So, and that's maybe it's that guy, maybe not.
Yeah.
And then the last kid, Link, is an African American boy played by Christoph St. John, and this guy's been in a lot of stuff. He played Alex Haley at 12 in Roots: The Next Generation, and he was on Young and the Restless for what is it?
I know he was on
almost 2,000 episodes. Yeah. It was from 91 to 2019.
Wow.
And he was married to a boxer and actor named Mia St. John.
Wow.
So very interesting guy. He did pass away in 2019.
Yeah.
So those are our kids, and that's everybody sort of sitting around, learning about how to tie a lasso, and Lance. Kerwin comes in, he rides in, it becomes evident that he is the son of Roy Rogers' character, J.P. Hadley, and he's telling him that the rustlers have struck again. And so they've got a rustler problem.
Yep.
Immediately, we know the conflict. Mm-hmm. So Roy goes inside, I'm just going to keep calling him Roy. I'm terrible. I try to use character names, but it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
I do my best, and it's Roy Rogers. How can you not call him Roy?
Exactly.
So he goes inside. He calls the sheriff, and he doesn't feel like he's getting much help from the sheriff, and so he says he's going to call Washington. And the sheriff tells his deputy that's what's happening, and the deputy right away is like, that's not a good idea. That's our job. And so just a little bit more about actors. So the sheriff is Sheriff Brody. He's played by David Clark. And this guy, he's an older guy in the show. So, he has a well-established career, back in the 50s and 60s. He's a Broadway actor, and he was in a lot of film noir. I haven't watched a lot of film noir, I'll be honest with you. I kind of feel like that's something I would enjoy, but it's just something I never sort of got into.
Right.
And I think I need to get into it, maybe.
Mm-hmm. It sounds cool, doesn't it? Yeah, like we should watch it.
Exactly. Like the Maltese Falcon. Like I don't think I've even seen that one. and that's like I think one of the most popular. If it is even, I'm not even sure if that's film noir. Is it?
I believe it is, yeah. And I've seen bits and pieces of it, but I haven't sat down and watched the whole thing in its entirety.
Yeah. All right, that's our assignment. We got to watch it. And so this guy was also in a couple episodes of The Waltons, and he was on Ryan's Hope as Tiso Novotny. That was one of his last credits.
Yeah.
And the deputy he's also been busy since the 50s, or at least the late 50s. He was a regular on a TV show called The High Chaparral, and the new Dick Van Dyke Show. He was a regular on Harry O, and The New Adventures of Zorro, and then another show that came later just called Zorro. And he was also a guy named Rafael Castillo in Santa Barbara, and Dr. Nunez in Bold and the Beautiful. And he will come back to Wonder Woman next season in the episode I Do, I Do.
I Do, I Do. You mentioned that earlier, that you didn't know which episode that was. It's if I may interrupt for a second, it's the one where
please.
And Diana goes undercover as they have a fake wedding. She doesn't marry Steve. She marries another IADC agent. They go to this health club. That's why it's called I Do, I Do. And then he's in that one.
I see.
And they're getting information from Washington Wives or something.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, I'm sure I'll recognize it when I see it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the deputy doesn't like the idea of Roy Rogers calling Washington, so he's like, let's get over there and talk him out of it. But in the meantime, Roy Rogers does call General Blankenship, our friend, my friend and yours. Apparently, they went to high school together, and it sounds like, so they played football together, and it sounds like Blankenship was the quarterback.
Sounds like it, yeah.
It's like, I ran a lot of interference for you, he said.
Yeah. That's
what Roy said. And it's time for you to run some for me. And so, Blankenship agrees. He's like, yeah, because the cattle is meant for the military. There's rationing going on, and I just read about this with animal products in general. That like this is where margarine comes from, because all the good, the meat and cheese and dairy, all that stuff had to go to the soldiers first.
Right.
And so we were kind of expected to ration and do what we could, and that's part of the reason they developed margarine, I think. I mean, that's what I just read, and I can't even name my source, so I could be wrong. But so this makes sense, though, that most of this meat is going to go to the military, and so that's why it's attractive to rustlers and the black market, is that they can sell it on the black market and get a price for it. So the general agrees, yeah, we're gonna send. We're a little short on manpower, but I'm gonna send you my best guy anyway. So he's like, I'll send you. I'm like, I'm not sure about the logic of what you just said there, General, but I'm all for it. So, and I will say, and I try not to be overcritical because I love the show, but I was just kind of looking at that map as he put the pin in the map on Texas, and I'm like, I wonder if they got an authentic map or if it's got Hawaii on it as a state.
Right. Yeah.
And it did have Hawaii on it, but I will say it is possible because it's a military map, and they had stations in Hawaii. It may be on there even before Hawaii became a state.
Right.
Because this would be about 8 years, I think, before statehood for Hawaii. Yeah. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're not. You're not wrong. It's fun to talk to somebody who overthinks this stuff like I do. So that's awesome. I didn't even think about that.
Because I was thinking 1950 for some reason, but because of Hawaii 5-0, it's 5-0 is 50 for the 50th state, yeah. and I think I confused that in my head with 1950 being the date that it happened, but I think it was it 1952?
Yeah, I know it was early 50s. I'm not sure when, but I know it was early 50s.
Because they had like a Hawaii Day on Happy Days.
Right. Yeah.
That's part of the reason I remember. And
you
that
speak
was
my language. Well, I know that because on this episode of this is
exactly. Like they were going to have a Welcome Alaska party, but it got too hot, and then they changed it to a Hawaii party, or was it the other way around? I can't remember now.
I think you're right the first time, yeah.
Because which was the last one? It was Hawaii.
Hawaii was the last one, yeah. I think.
So, yeah, so it would have been a Hawaii anyway. That's okay. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so Hawaii is on this map, and I either caught them at something or I didn't. Who knows? So, and one of the things that the general says during the phone call is that you've got yourself, because he talks about the kids. He talks about these, and he mentions that they're war orphans.
Yeah.
Which I think is, I forget that was a term, and I didn't know exactly what it meant, if they were orphaned because of battles where they were, or because their parents were soldiers. Because like that's what happened to Charlie Bright Eagle's father. He was called up to serve, and then he got killed in battle. So like I don't know how this kid from, I think he said that Sen was from Shanghai. Mm-hmm. Like how did these kids wind up in Texas?
I don't know, but and we can go into it later after you do the whole run through. But that's part of the reason Roy Rogers did this episode. You probably already know that, but he and Dale had adopted war orphans, and from different parts of the world. They even had a Native American kid.
I did not know that.
Yes, and that's one of the reasons. They wrote the episode for him, and that's the reason he wanted to do it.
No kidding.
Yeah, I can give you more information after you go through the run through. But yeah, I was fascinated when I found that out, that this is based on his real life. He adopted a bunch of war orphans, and he did have a son that was his biological son, and he also had war orphans.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
I know.
That changes my whole sort of perspective on this episode. I mean, not that it was, I liked it. Now I love it.
But now it just adds more to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, incredible. Okay, well, what I was going to say, and I'm not even sure if this is, probably not even a good guess anymore, but like when the general hears this, he says, you've got yourself a regular mini League of Nations. And I started thinking about these kids as being sort of a metaphor for the U.S. becoming sort of family with the allies, with the allied nations. Because there's this whole thing throughout the show. I guess I'm jumping ahead and I just can't help it. So because he's got his real son there, his biological son, I should say, and his biological son feels sort of neglected. Mm-hmm. And the bad guys take advantage of that. And it's very reminiscent. They're sort of, the way they take advantage of those feelings of abandonment or neglect, it's very reminiscent of the way like white supremacists operate. Where people sort of convince you, look, your family's not coming through for you. We're your family now. Right. You're being neglected. We won't neglect you. Yeah. And there's this real sense of, this is a line that comes up later. You're his real family, but he's neglecting you for these other people, for these strangers. He calls them total strangers, but there's this flavor of almost xenophobia in that, that sort of the way they coerce this kid. So I guess I was starting to see all that in this sort of this family that was put together. it just seemed like a larger metaphor, not just for, the U.S. sort of joining in partnership in a family sense with the allied countries.
Right.
Where this Nazi ideal is more like, we're pure, we're family, we're all the same. And so anyway, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I never thought of that, but I love talking to you, man. This is cool because this is usually the kind of stuff I'm saying, but I didn't come up with that one. That's great. Yeah, it totally makes sense.
So so General Blankenship sticks his pin in the map, and then we get a little scene, back with Lance Kerwin and Roy Rogers, and you can tell Lance is concerned that Washington's getting involved, but you don't know why yet. Although I just gave it away. It's because he's kind of in on this, and he shouldn't be, but he is. So we go ahead just a little bit in Blankenship's office again, and Steve and I guess maybe it's Steve's office because Diana gets on the phone there. Right. But Blankenship and Etta are both there. And I gotta say, I know this as a fact, but Steve, Lyle Wagner, in his uniform, is extremely handsome. Mm-hmm. I mean, we know that Wonder Woman is beautiful. She's beautiful as Diana Prince. She's beautiful as Wonder Woman. But sometimes I forget, Steve is an incredibly handsome guy.
Well, yeah, that's why she wanted to get off the island. She's like, oh, man.
That's right. That's right. And I don't know, there's just something about him in this scene. He's looking sharp. He's got his uniform on. And he's doing a little, he's joking around with Etta. He does his little Groucho thing. Mm-hmm. And
Etta's got a good line in there, too.
She does. She talks about.
Her father said that. My father says 2 steaks are better than a Betty Grable movie or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Because they're talking about how important it is to get down there and make sure that the cattle, the meat is going to the right place. And she also jokes around about. She does a little Southern accent and is Steve, maybe you can find me a man down there or something. Yeah. And that's when he does his little Groucho imitation. And then, so Diana calls for his plane. Blankenship says, let's do some dictation, Etta. And so as soon as everybody's out of the office, I don't know why it worries me so much that she doesn't seem to be that careful. But as soon as they've walked out of the office, Diana changes into Wonder Woman.
And the blinds are open. The the blinds are open. Always.
See right through there. So, but she's like, I'll do it quick.
Yeah.
So because Steve's ready to go. He's like, he's out the door. He's like, well, I got to follow him. So she turns into Wonder Woman. And then we go back to Roy talking to the sheriff and the deputy back at his ranch, and there's this really nice shot. I want to compliment Stuart Margolin because I gave him such a hard time last time. It's a really nice shot, and I'm not even sure what to call it. I think it's a jib shot. I should know because I work in production and I do this for a living. I should know that this is either a jib shot or a crane shot or whatever. I don't think it's a crane shot because you don't need a crane. You just need a nice camera jib because what it does is the camera starts over Roy's shoulder so you can see who he's talking to, and then it kind of swings around and lowers, and you get a nice shot of Roy Rogers. And the interesting thing about it, besides it just being a nice shot, is I think the reason he did it was because, and I can't explain why, but for some reason, it sort of builds tension between the two people having the conversation. There's some level of tension or anxiety. They're not getting along, and they aren't. They're kind of arguing without going past that polite line. Roy's basically saying, I've called Washington, and the deputy is like, that's you should let us do our job, and Roy's like, well, you're not doing your job.
Right, yeah.
You know, that's why I called Washington.
Exactly.
And so that camera angle just kind of underscores that conflict, and I really like it. And cool. I think I'm gonna just call it a jib shot. I don't know, because like a jib is like it's like one of those mic booms, but it's on a stand, but it's you know, sturdy enough to hold a camera so that you can swing the camera around and lower it, and so you can do a nice smooth move like that. Although in a big studio, you know, sometimes they have those old timey, like you have the actual, it's like a mini crane with a seat and a camera, and there's like the cinematographer is actually sitting in this seat, and he gets raised and lowered and swung around. But these days our cameras are lighter, and we have in our production van we actually have a jib that we hardly ever use, so I know they exist. Yeah. And I know what they're for, but we don't always use it.
Right. Is there a similar scene like that where Wonder Woman comes in? It's a scene where she's wearing the cape shortly after she gets there, and it seems like a swing shot to me from what I remember. When the camera's moving with her as she walks into the living room to talk to Roy and Steve. Yeah, it's incredible. There's a couple of really cool camera shots like that. And I think there's one, it's when everyone's around the table, and the camera, like, rather than doing a wide shot and then cutting to a close-up and then going back to a wide shot, the camera just moves and pulls in. You know, it looks like a zoom in, but there's something about the way the picture moves that you can tell the camera's actually moving closer. Like there's a subtle difference between the camera moving closer to the subject and the zoom, which is something Hitchcock took advantage of with those wild zooms that he would do, like in Vertigo. Oh yeah.
Where what he would do is like the camera's on tracks, and the camera would back up while it's zooming in, so the subject, like the person or whoever, would stay the same, but everything around it would like either expand. It's like that close up of Roy Scheider in Jaws when he realizes. Yeah, it's like that same thing. Like Scheider doesn't get bigger or smaller, but the entire background changes.
Yeah.
So anyway, but they don't do anything wild like that here. But they do.
The fact that they do what they do on a weekly TV series, that they took the time to add a little bit of that magic, is pretty cool. Yeah. There is something cinematic about this, and the fact that we haven't really talked about it. There was just the one shot with Lance Kerwin, but there's more coming up. All of the stuff with the horses is just really ambitious for a show. And and the thing is, like, throughout the 60s, there were all kinds of Western TV shows. Yeah. And so people knew how to do this stuff. I don't know if Stuart Margolin directed a lot of Westerns before this happened, but, he had people that helped him out, I'm sure, because the way the horse stuff is shot is fantastic. Yeah, the crew was probably excited to do a Western episode because, hey, we know what we're doing here.
Yeah. So we're in the front hall with Roy and the sheriff, and they do the cool camera move, and we know that these guys are, the deputy's getting more and more sort of uncomfortable with, the fact that Washington's getting involved, and he's not being trusted to do his job, and we find out more about that later. So in the meantime, it's evening, and the caption says it's evening, and Steve starts flying towards Texas, right? And then there's a shot of Wonder Woman in her plane, little Barbie Wonder Woman in her plane, and
but I don't care how easy it is. I love the plane.
It is awesome. And I didn't notice this, but my wife was watching and pointed it out, that almost without fail, up until now, when they show the plane, there's this kind of smooth jazz playing.
I love that music.
Yeah. and I think it's because the first time they were in the plane, she was taking Steve back to the States, and it was
a very romantic scene. She's like, she was just so sexy, saying, everything's going to be all right. I was like, oh, my God. But, yeah, the music went perfect with that opening scene and the plane and the pilot, yeah.
Yeah, and so, and this is the first time, I think, that we see the plane without that sort of jazz, theme music playing. It's just this, whatever the driving music was when they showed Steve's plane, they continue that with her plane. And the other thing that was, I don't know if they really did this on purpose, but I kind of appreciated that the planes were traveling from screen right to screen left, because that's the way I look at a map, and they're going west.
Exactly. They've always did that. I noticed that even as a kid. It's like, okay, she's going to Germany. Okay, she's coming back from Germany.
Right. So now we're at the campfire, and Roy's teaching the kids some more stuff. Like, almost every time we see Roy with the kids, he's teaching them something valuable, which is great, because it's like, sort of underscores his sort of paternal, position here, and sort of becoming their mentor and their father, hopefully. And so he teaches them a little bit of fire safety. Lance comes in with a plate of steaks, and this is another thing. My wife happened to be sitting next to me, and she's like, those steaks are not cooked. You can tell. And I'm like, well, I think they're not supposed to be. I think they're going to cook them on that fire there. But there's no like grill or anything to cook steak on a fire with. So I'm not sure how they're going to cook those steaks.
I never even thought of that. Your wife is a wise woman. I loved the episode with her on it. I mean, I've seen the episode 1,000 times, and that never even occurred to me.
Yeah, I just don't know. I mean, maybe there's stuff that we don't see. Maybe he's got like a grill that he's going to put on, over the fire, and he's got all this stuff, but it's just off screen or something. But all we've got is a plate of raw steak. And immediately, because Roy is an expert ranch guy, he's like, there aren't enough steaks here. he just looks at this pile and immediately knows how many there are. And Lance didn't bring a steak for himself because he's, and he comes right out and says, I'm not hungry. Go back to your new family.
Well, we're lucky. We found some nice dry kindled wood and got the fire started. But before that, we marked off a circle about 10 foot wide, and they scraped it bare inside the circle. You know why we did that? Babette?
No, monsieur. It's really quite simple, sir. We scrape the area to minimize any possibility of a spark from our fire, igniting dry grass, paper, leaves, etc. Is there anything you don't know, Freddy? Doubtful, old boy, doubtful.
Now, that sounds like a very revolting situation, don't you know? Well, you all keep warm, and I'll see what's happened to our steaks. Oh, thanks, Jeff. Yeah. Just a minute. We're one steak short.
Yeah, well, I ain't hungry.
What's the matter? Don't you feel good?
No, I'll be all right. You better get back to your new family.
So you can already tell sort of what's bothering him. Mm-hmm. And I'm surprised that Roy doesn't pick up on that. And maybe he does, and he's like, well, we'll talk about that later, or...
Yeah, I got to cook these steaks.
I got to cook steaks. I've got a pile of steaks here. And I've got kids, playing around a fire.
Right. There's another thing in that scene your wife might have noticed. The Texas flag is upside down at their ranch.
Is it?
I didn't notice it, but I know a lot of fans picked on it, and I've seen it on Facebook. People complaining the flag's upside down. Yeah.
Wow. No, I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
Huh. So it's still night. Oh, yeah. Okay. So this is the ghost town is next, and I'm trying to remember if that was a night scene or not, or if it's the next morning. I think it's the next morning. When the ghost town, we finally see the deputy come to this ghost town, and we're not sure why, because he goes into this building, and there's this guy there, and it looks, and he pulls out his gun, like he's going to arrest this guy,
right?
And then it turns out he's just joking, and the guy in there starts laughing. And this is Emmett Dawson, our evil cattle rustler, and he's played by Anthony George. And let's see, Anthony George, he was on Dark Shadow.
Oh, don't go there. That frightened the heck out of me when I was a kid.
Oh, did it? Did it?
Yeah, that's like, yeah. Let's not even go there. Nightmare.
Let's not. Okay.
Stuff. Yeah.
Now, he was on another soap that was less scary, Search for Tomorrow.
Yeah, I can handle that one.
He was on there for 5 years, did over 600 episodes, and his credits go back quite a ways. Did a lot of action stuff. Sea Hunt, did Alfred Hitchcock Presents.
Oh wow!
He passed away in 2005, and I enjoy him in this episode because he's one of those straight shooters. You know, like he laughs when the deputy comes in and pulls his gun on him.
Right.
But then he tells him, well, I've heard that, he called Washington, and so now we've got a war hero coming here. And Anthony George immediately gets serious.
Got us over 100 head last night.
Yeah, I heard about that. Good.
Have they complained again?
Oh, yeah. All the way to Washington this time. Even got a little action, too.
What kind of action?
Well, they're supposed to send out this hot-shot major, and he's supposed to shut us down.
You serious?
Oh, yeah.
Walt, I don't want to tangle with the military.
Hey, now, wait a minute. Neither do I.
What do we do about this major? Look, maybe it's time to quit.
No, we can't quit. We got too many commitments to make. Besides, we got this one big delivery left to make, okay?
Cancel.
Now, whoa, wait a minute now. What do you mean cancel him? What are you talking about? You don't cancel the mob. Relax. Take it easy. We're just buying time. Look, in 24 hours, we'll be out of business. And a whole lot richer. If we can just keep this Major Steve Trevor off our backs.
Yeah.
And the deputy's trying to laugh it off, like, don't worry about it. And this guy's like, no, we've got, like, we're doing crime here. We can't, let's not get arrested. So anyway, then they cut to Steve still flying, and I had to wonder about this because he started flying from Washington to Texas the previous night, and it said evening, really. So to be generous, maybe it's 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and it's morning, it's light out, and he's still flying.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to say in my headcanon that he stopped somewhere to refuel, decided to eat, and maybe take a nap.
I love
because I don't.
You think these things through.
Because why? How could that possibly take 12 hours? I mean, I guess I don't know. I don't know how fast a plane like that can fly. I mean, it is I think it was a combat airplane, which I know doesn't have a lot of speed and may not. I don't know how far they can go. I know there were limits. That's why there are aircraft carriers, because you can only go so far in a plane that's built for combat, especially if it's hauling a lot of ammo that eats up the fuel. But I don't know. I'm just going to say he took a stop. He took a rest.
Meanwhile, Diana's going, "What's taking you so long?"
I know. So we see the kids at breakfast. They're entering, and Roy's doing like a hand inspection. Did you wash your hands? Did you wash behind your ears? And they sit down at breakfast, and it's a super sweet scene. There's a little bit of an argument between Link and Freddie about who's going to say grace.
Right.
And eventually, Link acquiesces, and he says it, and it's very sweet,
Yeah.
Freddie, it's your turn. No, it's not. It's Link's turn. It ain't my turn, Lincoln. There's no such word as ain't in the English language. Oh, yeah? Well, that's okay, because all I speak is American. And this American says, it ain't my turn to say grace.
All right. Now stop your bickering. Link, are you sure it isn't your turn to say grace?
Well, maybe it is. Bless this day, and bless Mr. Hadley for taking us in when nobody else wanted us. Bless this food, and thank you for making Texas a nicer place than Harlem. Oh yeah, see to it that Major Trevor arrives here today safe. Amen. Honey.
Thank you, Link. Maria, where's Charlie Bright Eagle?
She go for a ride.
And then we realize that Charlie Bright Eagle is not there.
Right.
And he's out riding. Maria tells Roy that that's where he is. He's out riding.
Yeah.
Which I guess it's okay that these little kids can just saddle a horse and take it out for a ride.
Yeah.
But I gotta tell you, that shot of Charlie on this horse.
Yeah.
Then they cut to him riding, and that giant horse is bouncing this little kid around.
Yeah. He's like the youngest of them all, and he's handling it.
So Charlie Eagle is being bounced around on that giant horse.
Huge horse.
Yeah. And he sees what happens next. And so we've got the rustlers waiting for Steve. And we see Steve driving up in his Jeep, and they kind of do a little exposition. We're like, haha, he's going down the wrong road like he's supposed to. Mm-hmm. And they're basically they've got this setup where like they're leading him to this place where there's a trap. So Steve stops because there's a giant boulder in the road, and he goes to check out the boulder. And as soon as he walks around it, the ground sort of falls out from under him because it's just
right.
like one of those traps where they've just got like a little tarp or something with some brush, over it. And it's actually a very well built hole.
Yeah.
Like that hole. If that hole was built for this trap, they spent some time.
Yeah, they really did well on the spot, didn't they?
And it may be from something else, but
right.
like a repurposed hole. But it has walls and everything, like wooden walls.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice and square, wooden walls, and I couldn't tell what was in there, but there was like stuff in there, maybe someplace for him to sit. I don't know, but so he falls into this very nicely constructed hole, and then they have levers all set to go like pry the giant boulder so that it tips and falls over the hole. So he's trapped.
Yeah.
I'm not
doesn't yell for help.
He doesn't. He's just like, here comes a boulder. It's going to cover this hole.
I got to give credit to my friend Stephen Meadows. He pointed that out. Why doesn't he yell for help? And well, he knows she's going to show up eventually, so he's just waiting.
Yeah. Right. So so they use these branches to pry this thing. I'm not sure those branches were big enough to tilt that giant boulder. Like that is a big boulder.
Right.
And it's good that it's big because then, later on we get to be impressed by Wonder Woman. Spoiler alert. But for now, they use these branches that I don't know. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to buy it because of physics. Physics tell us, with a good enough lever, you can move a mountain.
Right.
So we're going to go with it. So they trap him. And then Charlie,
good old Charlie,
gets on his horse. Yeah, he gets on his horse and he starts heading back to the ranch to tell somebody, or to at least get somebody if you can't tell. Because what I didn't mention is that Charlie doesn't talk.
Right.
And I guess we don't know that yet, so it's okay that I haven't mentioned it. But it comes, it becomes an issue later when somebody asks a question and he's like, he doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he starts heading back towards the ranch, and then they show the guys again. And if you notice this shot, Charlie's still in the background there in this final shot of these two guys. When they're like, well, we've got work to do, and then they leave. And you can see Charlie way in the background. So it's a little bit out of sequence. But anyway, he's heading back to the ranch. And in the meantime, Wonder Woman arrives, and the way she arrives is by just running through the forest. Running through the woods. She parked her plane somewhere, and she's just running. Yeah. And I don't know what else she could do. If she walked, it would take way longer. And if she's running, she can get there faster, and it doesn't wind her because she's a goddess.
Yeah,
that's right. So she shows up. She meets Maria. She meets Charlie at the house, and that's when we find out that he doesn't talk.
Right.
And so Wonder Woman asks, I'm looking for my friend Steve. Have you seen him? And he nods right away.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, can you take me to him? She barely finishes the sentence. And he grabs her.
Yeah, I love Charlie.
Yeah. And so then there's this beautiful shot of both of them riding out there.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell it's Wonder Woman, and she's riding at a good clip. And I mean, I'm sorry, you can tell it's Lynda Carter.
Right.
And it's a great shot. And I guess at this point, I'll just talk about the horse trainers. I just wanted to mention them because they have 5 people total credited with as animal trainers for the horses. There's an animal coordinator and a head trainer.
Yeah.
And it's Frank and Juanita INN, and
I know
apparently you know their name?
They did Benji.
Really?
They trained all the animals on Beverly Hillbillies and Petticoat Junction.
Wow.
Yeah, which ended up, the dog from Petticoat Junction ended up being Benji.
No kidding.
Yeah. True story.
You are a font of knowledge.
See, you are too. That's so much fun to talk to you. You speak my language.
So we've got Frank and Juanita. We also have Karen, if I can say this right, McHugh. Mm-hmm. It's a long name, but she is an animal trainer. And then a couple more names that sound very cowboy to me: Boone Nar and Corky Randall.
Wow.
Corky Randall is the head animal trainer.
Sounds like a character name.
Yeah. So anyway, all these people were there for the horses, either to look after them, train them, and because there's just like what with stunt people, I'm sure there are different horses for each of these specialties. Like, there are horses that the actors just sort of, trot out of the scene with. There's like horses that go on a really fast run, and usually it's a very, sort of wide shot, so it's probably a stunt person. Yeah. And then there are actual stunts where, the horses rear up, and in one, there's a great stunt later where Wonder Woman kind of gets pulled off of her horse and the horse falls over, and it's just amazing.
Yeah.
And, there's like 3 stunt people and a stunt horse all in this shot working together, and it's just phenomenal. But we'll get to that. In the meantime, so Wonder Woman is riding out to wherever Charlie's taking her. She gets to where Steve is trapped under the rock. She lifts the rock, and they show Charlie just amazed. He's got this great look of like, holy cow.
Like every other kid in America watching.
Exactly. And so she lifts the rock. She gets Steve out of there with her lasso, and he uses it to climb. And they head back to the ranch, and they tell the sheriff, and Wonder Woman doesn't come into the room yet, and Steve hesitates to mention her, and so it's just Steve and Roy and the sheriff and the deputy talking about Steve. I think the deputy's there, and he's telling him somebody trapped me under a rock, and if it wasn't for a good Samaritan, I'd still be there.
It makes you wonder if Steve is already clued in. I mean, he doesn't want everybody to know Wonder Woman's there, So I'm wondering if he's already cluing in. Right.
Yeah, that must be it. Because it was, at first I thought it was weird, but it comes in handy later, when somebody, like the deputy doesn't know that Wonder Woman's involved, and then that sort of changes the game. But so the deputy and the sheriff leave, and of course the deputy is like, hey, sheriff, don't worry about looking into this. I'll take care of it myself. Yeah. I'll take my buddy out there, and we'll look into it. And the sheriff, And Roy does say, the sheriff's getting on in years, and the sheriff kind of gives up pretty easily. He's like, okay, yeah, you do that.
Whatever.
So then Wonder Woman comes in, and there's that shot you were talking about.
We were talking about, yeah.
Yeah, and she's got that beautiful cape on, and Roy, and so this is where Roy mentions, he says Maria will take your baggage, and Steve says, hey, Wonder Woman packs light. She doesn't, because Wonder Woman's like, I don't have baggage, I don't have anything.
Yeah.
And he says Maria will find you a change of clothes.
Yeah.
And so let me just say that up until I spoke to you about this episode, I was under the mistaken impression that a lot of people are, that there's a rumor that Roy Rogers had a problem with Wonder Woman's costume.
And that
so
is
in this
legend, from what Lynda says.
Well, yeah, and you can tell. I mean, my memory of this episode was that she wore this these slacks and shirt that she winds up in through the whole episode. But like we're all the way into the episode, she hasn't even changed clothes yet.
Right.
So obviously
I have a quote of hers that she was on the PBS Pioneers of Television that did a special on superheroes a few years ago, and she comments on it. I wrote down the exact quote. Roy Rogers did not ask me to cover up, and he was not embarrassed. He wanted to play the character because it had to do with adopted children. Everybody loved him. He was so sweet.
Awesome.
So there you go.
Hard evidence right there.
Yeah, from Wonder Woman herself.
There was no problem with, and so it makes sense, that she's going to be there a while. And
yeah, because Diana's not there, so she's not, she's Wonder Woman the whole time she's there.
Right, and she can't change into Diana, but she also can't wear this battle gear the whole time,
Yeah, and
because
plus technically for the show it makes sense because she's going to do a lot of horseback riding, which is probably easier in the pants,
Yeah.
Yes, he's a terrific boy. Why can't he talk?
Not can't. Won't. He's sort of become a loner. Kind of climbed up inside himself and stayed there.
Why?
His father was my foreman here at the Diamond H, and him and Charlie was just close as could be. He was killed at Pearl Harbor, and Charlie's been that way ever since.
What about his mother?
She died during childbirth.
So you're adopting Charlie along with the other war orphans?
I'm trying to. The courts are checking to see if he has any relatives with prior claims.
Well, I'm sure he'll make a very fine son.
He certainly will.
Oh, Maria,
Si, senor.
we have house guests. Would you check and see if the rooms are ready?
Muy bien, senor.
How about your luggage?
Oh, well, I'm afraid I don't have any luggage.
Wonder Woman travels very light.
Well, I'm sure Maria will have something you can wear, okay?
Thank you very much.
So, we've talked about she's going to change clothes, and we know that it's not for nefarious purposes. It's just because, and plus, it's just a different way to see her.
Yeah.
Because Don Feld did this beautiful costume, but they change it up, the next season, and it's just cool to see her, because, and then they start, she's got an outfit for swimming, and she's got an outfit for skateboarding, and,
Yeah.
So it's just a way for them to sort of, stretch out the character a little bit and show us something different. So I think it's terrific.
Yeah.
So we get back to the ghost town, and there's a brief confrontation, where the sheriff's like, I thought you were going to, he gets back to the ghost town, and the rustler, Emmett Dawson, is like, they've got their new bunch of cattle that they just stole, and they're loading them off a truck. And so it's like the audio for the scene must have been challenging. I mean, I'm sure it's all the voices are re-looped, but it still sounds like it's very noisy, and it's almost hard to hear everybody, but you can kind of hear them. Right. But I think they probably re-recorded their voices just to have a little bit of control over the levels,
Yeah.
Because that had to be loud in
Yeah.
that truck. Because those cattle are just coming off that truck, and they're not slowing down.
They're just barreling off of it.
Okay, come on, kid. What happened?
Well, we saw these 5-6 D's grazing alongside the creek and decided to give them a lift.
What, Steve Trevor? I'm talking about Steve Trevor. You said you were going to keep him out of the way for me.
Oh, that boy's tough to beat a rock in a hard place. No one's been around him for a long time.
I was talking to him at 5 and 8 for your information.
That's impossible.
Oh, yeah?
River hole, put a rock on top of it.
You know what I think? I think you two boys have been drinking too much rat-gut whiskey. You've been seeing things, my man.
Not true, Walt. If you hadn't had a drink.
I'll horse feathers.
Now, look, Walt, I told you.
We've got some beef commitments. By golly, we're going to fill them. And I don't care if Steve Trevor and the whole United States Marine Corps goes up around here.
And this is the first time I noticed that there's another deputy who's helping our evil deputy, who we found out is a bad guy. Mm-hmm. So this poor sheriff, who is apparently a good guy, is surrounded by people who have evil on their minds.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just a brief scene. We go back to the ranch, and Wonder Woman comes in with her new outfit. It's gorgeous. It's like white pants and a red shirt, and she's still got the belt and the lasso and everything.
Yeah.
And Steve, speaking of costumes, has this glorious bandana on because he's in Texas now, so he's on a ranch, so he's gonna dress appropriately. So he's got a bandana around his neck. And he's, got casual clothes on, and Roy talks a little bit about who the rustler might be, and he's like, well, I'm pretty sure we know who it is. It's Emmett Dawson. He's like, he's a local dead end kid, and that reference went right past me because I know the reference, but I thought I'd bring it up because not everybody under a certain age might know who the dead end kids are,
right?
And so the dead end kids, there's some stuff I didn't know when I looked this up because I grew up, like, I didn't watch a lot of Westerns, but there was a channel in Milwaukee that ran reruns every Sunday of The Lone Ranger, The Cisco Kid, and The Bowery Boys. Oh yeah. And there was one other thing. I think it might have been Superman. I'm not sure, but there was four of them. Right. And so the Bowery Boys was always on, and that's like this old timey. It's kind of like an older version of the Our Gang Kids. Yeah. From Little Rascals. Mm-hmm. And they started out. This I didn't. I'll say that they've gone under different names. Like you've seen them in movies. Hunts Hall has been in all of these. And Leo Gorcey's been in most of them. They were the Bowery Boys, the East Side Kids, and the Dead End Kids. And the Dead End Kids was the original. And I don't think Leo Gorcey was in at the time, but Hunts Hall was. And what it was a group of young actors from New York who did a play called The Dead End Kids. Just The Dead End. Dead End is the name of the play, and so they were the Dead End Kids. But it was a play on Broadway in 1935, and Samuel Goldwyn saw it and brought them to Hollywood to make a movie version of that Dead End play. Yeah. And so that's how they became the Dead End Kids, and then they kept on with the Bowery Boys and the East Side Kids. Yeah. And they were the kids in Angels with Dirty Faces. Oh yeah, that was one of their big movies because it had James Cagney in it.
Yeah. I'm familiar with the Bowery Boys, but I knew the reference to Dead End Kids, but I didn't know the origin of it.
Yeah, I thought I had suspected that the Dead End Kids were an iteration of the Bowery Boys, but I didn't know they were the original.
You were mentioning how there's references that some people might not get. One of the things I loved about Wonder Woman was it was like quality time with my dad because he loved it too. He especially loved the 40s episodes. And that was our father-son time together, was watching Wonder Woman. And if I had a question about World War II or whatever reference they made, he would give me the answers during the commercial break. So it was great. It was a learning experience, because my dad was in World War II. And so he knew, with the stuff I didn't know, he could tell me it during a commercial break.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Like your own Wikipedia right there.
Exactly, yeah.
That is great.
Yeah.
So, and it makes me wonder what references I do miss, because like this one went by so fast.
Right.
And you can get in context what he means by a dead-end kid. So you don't necessarily have to know about the dead-end kids, but it's kind of interesting.
Right.
And so sometimes I wonder about how many of those types of references just fly over my head.
Yeah.
And I don't really know. Because a lot of the people, like you said, a lot of the story came from Roy Rogers and his life. And the writer was I didn't write down the age of the writer, but he had been writing stuff since the 60s. So, he's of a certain age. And I see this on MASH all the time where they have all these pop culture what would be pop culture references in 1952 or whenever the Korean War was. And I get some of them and some of them I've had to look up,
Right.
But, so anyway, here we are.
They say TV's not educational.
Exactly. The right TV is educational. That's another thing. I grew up watching TV sort of out of necessity. Like I just needed to watch it because I was a poor kid and it was better to watch TV than to do whatever else. And so, it was an escape is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I did start out watching kind of some crappy shows, and I won't really mention them because there's something good about every show.
Yeah, but there's somebody out there that loves them as much as we love Wonder Woman. So
exactly. And so, but I did start gravitating towards shows that had a little more substance and a little more, and not necessarily that were serious, but the humor was even a little more elevated than some other shows. And so I feel like there's a lot of good stuff out there. You just sometimes have to look for it.
Yeah. And when you're a kid, you're gravitated to what you like, and if you're lucky, you get something out of it,
Yeah, exactly. So, and then one last thing about this scene. So Roy says, because he's talking about the kids and he's talking about his wife who's passed away, and he says, life's nothing if not filled with ifs.
You're a very generous man, Mr. Hadley.
I'm a very lucky man. Those youngsters fill a need. Jeff's mother and I'd had enough kids to form our own baseball team if she'd have lived. But I guess life's nothing if it's not filled with ifs.
And Steve looks at Wonder Woman in kind of a thoughtful way, like, she's kind of an if in his life,
Yeah.
But because, and this happens throughout the first season where there's a lot of, at this point it's not just flirtation. It's,
right.
They're kind of in love with each other.
Oh, yeah.
And
you knew that from the pilot.
Yeah. And the situation never seems like, like it's going to allow for that. And so they keep sort of waiting. I don't know if they've resigned themselves to that or if they're just waiting for the right time. Like I would have said up until this episode, they're just waiting for the right time. They're waiting for the right time to get together. But the way Steve looks at her, and I can't tell if she's looking back at him. I don't think so. But I know that she feels the same. There's so much, I don't know, loss in that look or wishing for something else. Like I wonder if he's already resigned to the fact that this is not going to happen.
Yeah.
And at least not while the war's going on.
Right.
But then what? I mean, she's there to help with the war effort.
Yeah.
She might disappear after the war. I don't know.
Which she did, according to the TV show, for 30 years, and then that was that.
Right.
And a lot of the fans say, well, why didn't the romance continue in the New Adventures of Wonder Woman? I'm like, well, it's Steve's son. That's kind of weird, And I mean, they loved each other. They had mutual respect for each other, but the whole time, it's Steve's son,
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that does make it impossible.
Hmm.
So the kids are this is the next day. Kids are doing chores. And Wonder Woman is demonstrating her lasso of truth on the little British boy.
Yeah.
And by the way, they don't come right out and say it. I think there's maybe a super quick line later on. But the deputy in I think the next scene, or maybe in a few scenes, the deputy is telling Lance Kerwin, "You got to find out for us why Wonder Woman's so powerful."
Yeah.
So the idea is that through these kids are going to figure out or she's going to tell the kids like how she's where she gets her powers from, and she's doing that right here. She's kind of explaining her lasso and everything, and so later on, and I never see I don't see Lance talk to these kids. I don't see Lance tell the deputy or the rustler, this is how she has her power. They just know to take off her belt when they attack her. And so there's some stuff that I
see what you're saying. I just assumed one of the kids told Lance Kerwin that, you know what, Wonder Woman's power comes from her belt, but you don't see it. The viewer doesn't see it.
Right, which I think you're right. I think that's what happens. But there's only enough room in their 48 minutes for so much dialogue. So a lot of stuff we just have to assume happened.
Yeah, little did they know that 40 years later we'd be talking about it for 2 hours.
Exactly.
And having a blast doing it.
Yeah. And so she shows Freddy the lasso of truth, and he's not pleased with the result because she busts him fibbing about his age.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, dude, you let her put the lasso of truth on you. What do you think's going to happen?
Yeah.
But he had to know. Yeah. So this is where we find out that Lance is the insider. I believe this is where we find out because he goes to the deputy's office.
Yeah.
Is this the first time we really see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Other than up until now, he's just a moody teenager who seems upset that his attention is elsewhere.
Right.
But he updates him. He updates the deputy on the herd, where the herd is. Nobody's going to be watching the herd tonight, and tells them about Wonder Woman and Steve. And this is where the deputy says, you got to we need to find out where her, why she's so powerful, so that we can get her out of the picture. And this is where the deputy, because Lance is already kind of like, you can tell he's feeling bad about reporting on this stuff already. Yeah. And so the deputy kind of has to remind him.
Come on, give us the information.
It's the herd. My dad's having part of it moved down to the North 40 tomorrow morning.
What about security?
Well, we ain't got none at night anymore. 3 more of our hands got drafted. Hey, Trevor ain't alone, though. He's got Wonder Woman helping him.
Wonder Woman?
He's the one who strung you out of the trap.
Don't you worry about that. We'll take care of her. All we need is one more big haul. We'll all be a lot richer. You just keep doing your work. Okay, kid? That's all.
No, don't count on it.
Why? What's wrong with you?
What do you mean?
Hey. Your conscience bothering you again?
I hate doing this foreman.
Let me tell you, what your daddy's doing to you is a whole lot worse. Ignoring his own flesh and blood. Spending all that time with those other kids. They are total strangers. I don't like to say this, but I don't think your daddy gives a hoot what happens to you. It's just a good thing that you've got loyal friends like us around.
And so
that goes back to what you were discussing earlier.
Yeah, any group really. That tries to coerce, young disenfranchised people who are looking for something, looking for some kind of connection. unfortunately, anybody who's predatory will, uses that sort of advantage. When they sense that somebody is alone or feels alone, they're like, I'm your friend.
Yeah.
So it's really kind of sad and upsetting.
Yeah.
So anyway, but it works on Lance, at least for now, because his father is overwhelmed when you think about it, with not just with taking care of all these kids, but he's still grieving for his wife.
Right.
That scene where he says that his wife passed away, and he's looking at this painting of her.
Mm-hmm.
It's really kind of touching, and it's clear that that's, there's a lot of regret there. He's talking about life's full of ifs, and so I don't think he's completely processed that yet.
Yeah.
So this is all stuff that Lance is kind of unaware that his father's dealing with, and so maybe his father seems disconnected, but there are reasons.
Yeah.
So anyway, our deputy takes advantage, and we don't like him.
No.
So the deputy goes to Ghost Town, and there's a nice poker game happening, and this guy in the background is playing guitar, which I did not write this down because I couldn't find really a lot of credits for him, but there's somebody listed in the credits just as the man, and I think it's the guy playing guitar. There are two other people who are not credited. It's this other deputy who drives around, our evil deputy, and then there's also the guy who helps the rustler. I forgot his name. The head rustler from Dark Shadows. He helps him throw Steve under a rock. He has a couple of lines. So one of those guys is the man in the credits, and I'd like to think that he's also the guy playing guitar, because he does a beautiful job. He's playing and whistling.
Yeah.
Sets
the mood perfectly.
Yeah. And so the deputy, for some reason, is in a pretty jovial mood, and so he joins the poker game in progress, and and also figures on doing some planning. They're going to do some planning for their next move. So Steve and Roy are at the ranch again, discussing who the leak might be. And Steve, they talk a little bit about the sheriff, and just like Blankenship, they grew up together, so Roy doesn't think it's the sheriff. But he asks about the deputy, and the deputy has only been there for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And so Steve kind of gets a feeling about him, and he decides to go run a check on the deputy. Roy says, you can use my phone, and he's like, nah, I'll go over to the base and use a scrambled channel or something. And so Lance overhears this, and he's like, yeah, okay. And so he runs and sort of calls the rustler guy and gives them the heads up. I wondered a little bit, I didn't want to sort of overthink this, but why Lance just visited the deputy at the deputy's office. So why not call him at the deputy's office? Well, maybe he did try to call and he wasn't there. So he calls the ghost town where the rustler is, and I'm thinking, do they have a phone line there?
Wow.
I mean, they could, and maybe they have, they've got to communicate. They're like a financed group of criminals. So maybe they have like a generator and a radio station, or like a little ham radio that converts to a phone or something. I'm just going to say that.
I'm so glad to meet somebody that overthinks more than I do. I didn't even think of that, but now that you bring it up, I'm like, oh yeah, why? Okay, go ahead.
Like not only do they have this working phone in a ghost town, but Lance knew the number.
Mm-hmm.
Like he knew where to call.
Yeah.
So anyway, but he's calling to tell the deputy this, but excuse me, but he tells the rustler and rustler guy it's like, okay, we'll take care of him. And then Lance comes back and goes riding with Wonder Woman and Roy.
Yeah.
And there's a so it looks great when they go out to ride, more cool horse riding stuff.
Right.
And this is where I need to find out more about the stunt people, because I've tried to research as much as I could on Jeannie Epper, who's considered to be the main stunt person for Lynda Carter in Wonder Woman. But there's also Kitty O'Neill, who's got quite a few credits, especially in the IMDb. Like, for example, in this episode, Kitty O'Neill is credited as the stunt person. And Jeannie Epper's not. I watched a couple of interviews with Jeannie Epper, and she mentioned that she kind of indicated that she was there kind of from the beginning. Yeah.
And I probably watched the same thing, but they did. I know she said there's some stunts that I wouldn't do, and they would have to get other people. So, but I know she did all of her horse riding in the CBS episodes, because you can tell they have more close-ups in the CBS episodes where you can tell it's Jeannie Epper, but it's hard to tell with this one.
Well, that's a good point, because like one of the things I heard was that basically Kitty O'Neill was first season, and after that it was Jeannie Epper, and it would make sense that, like, in a way, the CBS series is kind of its own thing, and so they would have gotten their cast and their crew and everybody together as though they're doing a new show, and so Jeannie Epper would have interviewed for that, like she said, from the beginning, but there was this first season on another network. So anyway, I guess we have to assume it's Kitty O'Neill. Yeah, and
brought Kitty O'Neill back on like one of the last episodes, the roller coaster episode, where she does that huge leap, because Jeannie Epper didn't want to do that huge leap from the tall building, and so they got Kitty O'Neill. So they flip-flop sometimes.
Yeah. It's funny. So the interview I was watching, she said I Kitty did the big falls. I didn't like doing high falls, and then all the footage they showed was Jeannie Epper doing falls. Yeah, that's the footage they had. Yeah. So anyway, so yeah, we'll assume it's Kitty O'Neill, and so they do this, and unfortunately they also don't say who Lance Kerwin's stunt double is, because they did list a stunt double. They had a stunt coordinator who I didn't look up, but I guess I'm assuming the coordinator was not the kid who did the Lance Kerwin stunt. But the other stunt person that's listed, his other credits included lots of Klingons and stuff. And I'm thinking it's probably a big guy. Yeah. So it's probably not Lance Kerwin's stunt person if he's a Klingon. Because I haven't seen any Lance Kerwin-sized Klingons.
No, not that I recall.
So we don't know who did Lance's stunt, but Lance gets his he sees a snake, and Lynda Carter and Roy Rogers have already gotten off their horses, and Lance is about to get off his horse, but he sees a snake, and of course he goes, "Snake," and kind of freaks out, and so the horse freaks out, and so the horse rears up, and then starts running, and Lance is like, he's got his foot caught in the stirrup, and so he's kind of like lying sideways on the saddle, and the horse is bolting. So it's this beautiful stunt work. Yeah, we just, and it could be anybody. There could be a woman, because it's a little guy. Lance is a little guy. So in those days, a lot of times, this was when women were just sort of getting started doing stunts. A lot of the stunts were, even for women, for female actors, they were just small guys doing the stunts. Yeah. And so I have to believe it's probably just a small guy who's doing the stunt rather than a woman, but it could be a woman too.
If I remember correctly, Jeannie Epper said in some interview, thanks to Wonder Woman and the Bionic Woman, stunt women were finally getting work, where they weren't using a guy.
Yeah. So, and of course Wonder Woman goes after him, and I looked up close on my big screen TV to see if I could recognize who the rider was for Lynda Carter. I'm also going to say maybe Kitty O'Neill because Jeannie Epper does have kind of a specific look to her.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like I would recognize her.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's great stunt riding. There's a big chase where Wonder Woman catches up to him, and she helps him out.
Yeah.
Oh, and there was a shot like through they went through this covered bridge, which was really cool.
Yeah.
So eventually she stops the horse and helps Lance. She doesn't take him down off the horse because he's got to ride all the way back. So he just kind of rights himself on the saddle, and so him and Roy are going to head back, and Wonder Woman's going to keep riding. And I forget what they're looking for though. I guess they're just kind of looking for the cattle rustlers.
I guess so. They don't really explain it, do they? They're just out riding while Steve's doing his thing and stop to give the horses water.
Yeah. So I guess they're looking for the rustlers. They're probably covering like where the cattle were and where they're going to be, and I don't know. So she decides to keep looking, and that's when she gets run down by the deputy's car. Now I will say, I was confused at first when the deputy, she's just riding. The deputy's coming up behind her, and I believe he starts his siren.
Yeah.
And it seems like she would just stop and wonder, like, why is he running a siren? Like, maybe he needs me. But she just bolted. She was like, I'm being chased. And she just goes. And so they catch up to her, and they do this great stunt I was talking about, where the guys run out of their car, and the horse rears up, and they go to grab her, and she falls off the horse, falls over one of the guys, and then falls between the guys, and in the meantime, the horse falls, and falls in such a way that it doesn't crush the stunt guy that was right next to it. Like, it's a beautiful stunt, but it looked incredibly dangerous.
Yes, it did. And I wonder, did they do it all in one take? Because it looked great.
Yeah, the whole thing. Like, they didn't cut away during the fall. They got it around the horse. It reared up, and then both Wonder Woman and then the horse fell over, and that was all one shot. Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah. But it's followed by the scene that bugs me the most. I love that scene with the horse, but when they grabbed the belt off of her, I just thought that, she's an Amazon. I know the Nazis take the belt from her all the time, but it just seemed too easy, It was just, they followed up that really cool horse scene with a quick, let's grab her belt, It just,
you know whose fault it is? Stuart Margolin.
There you go. Let's blame him. Let's blame him. He was doing so good too. We're back to
shaming Stewart.
That's
Stuart.
one of two scenes in this that irked me. That the little but anyway, go ahead, proceed.
Well, what I'll tell you, what bothered me more about it is that they left it there.
Yeah.
Because
good for Charlie, but dumb for them.
I know. Like, they're not. It's also clear that they're not really smart.
Yeah.
Like, they're not like they've got a plan, and they're sticking to the plan, and that's great, good for them.
Yeah.
But they're not good at like improvisational thinking. They're not good at
Nazis were much better at that stuff than the wrestlers. The wrestlers. Wrestlers. Well, the wrestlers too.
The wrestler. Yeah, I got confused actually at the beginning of it. Right. And the first time I watched it, I'm like, is Lance Kerwin saying wrestlers? Wrestlers? So yeah, they do this weird thing where they're able to immediately get the belt off of her.
Yeah.
And throw it on the ground, which makes no sense.
Yeah.
But they're so pleased with themselves that they've got her.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. They're just excited about the moment. And they almost just got crushed by a horse. So, whatever. We'll just say, it was a little bit chaotic for a moment, but now here we are.
Hey, our job was to get her, not to get the belt. You didn't say anything about bringing back the belt.
That's right. So they hustle her into the car, and then she's in the back of a police car, and that's it. Without her super strength, you know, she is kidnapped. She is now there. So they drive off with her. And Steve, in the meantime, he's at the military base, and he calls in the FBI investigation on the deputy. And in the meantime, of course, Charlie, good old Charlie.
I love Charlie.
Saw this whole thing go down.
Yeah.
Because he's like,
where it gets good for me, man. This, I love the whole final act with Charlie and the gang. So go ahead, but I love this.
Yeah, yeah. So he follows them, and he sees where they lock up Wonder Woman, and after they take her to the ghost town and put her in a cell, and so after they leave, he goes up to see if he can help or whatever, and he finds the door's padlocked, and it's way too big for him to deal with, so he decides to go back. He's going to go back and get help.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, he grabs that belt.
Yeah, because he's smart.
He's going to need it.
Where the rustlers were.
So then, in the meantime, they've got Wonder Woman locked up. They go after Steve.
Yeah.
And they run him down the same way. They just chase him. But at least he explains. He's like, because the deputy kind of like, cocky and jokingly, he's like, why didn't you stop when you heard my siren? And Steve's like, instinct.
Yeah.
I know you're garbage. He didn't say that, but
right.
But he did. But he does say to his face, like, I know you're not who you say you are. I found out that the real deputy, I'm sorry, Lampkin. He died a war hero. He you took his background and his letters of recommendation. And in the meantime, he died a hero's death. He makes sure that the deputy knows that he's a snake.
Yeah,
he is a coward. So anyway, the deputy's like, okay, whatever, and then he throws Steve into the car so they can lock him up as well. So Charlie gets back to the house.
Yeah, Wonder Woman's our friend. She needs our help. I love that.
Yes, Charlie, who could not speak or would not speak. Suddenly speaks, and all the kids react like they should. They're like, "Oh my gosh,
yeah,
you're talking," and he's like, "Don't worry about that. Just come with me."
Yeah.
So, and here I will say, I do not want to at all rain on your parade, because it is completely awesome that the kids go help, but I feel like there's a missed opportunity because they do not take the girl.
That's the second thing, Stan. I'm not even kidding you. I said there's two things that bugged me about this episode. Where was Babette?
Exactly.
The whole point of Wonder Woman is girl power. Where is Babette?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
That day or what? But it bugged me when I was a kid. I was like, "Where's the girl?"
I have to believe that. I choose to believe that there was some producer that was just like, people aren't going to buy it. People aren't going to be willing to go with a girl being taken on this dangerous thing.
On
a bunch
show
of boys
about a woman who saves the world.
I know, I'm wrong. There's no explanation and there's no excuse.
The one I always came up with, I always thought, well, maybe the girl that played Babette was sick the day they filmed that scene, and they just did it without her. Because it just made no sense not to take Babette with them.
Yeah, and the bummer is it happens twice.
Mm-hmm.
This is the guys going on their own, and then later on, Wonder Woman takes them with her, and there's absolutely no way Wonder Woman would not include the girl.
Right. Exactly.
So it's even worse the second time. Like the first time, you could say it's story-wise. Well, the boys don't tell the girl. Because they think the girl can't handle it or whatever. But Wonder Woman would not.
Was Babette in the kitchen scene where Charlie comes in and talks?
I don't think she is.
Okay. So,
I don't think
they got an excuse for that one. They just took off.
Yes, they did absolutely. Because if she's not there, she can't go with it. They just ran out.
Right.
So we'll leave that for now. Although it is kind of upsetting.
Yeah.
But so they go to the ghost town, and they're immediately like, well, what do we do? And I think Sen, the Asian kid, is like, let's get a battering ram, like let's grab this log or whatever. Like he has the idea, and so they immediately, like in unison, like these kids have been together forever or something. You know, they grab it. They, you know, Charlie throws the belt on the front of it. Like, and I love it. I don't know why he does it, but I love it. Mm-hmm. Because, like, maybe it'll give the log more power or something.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought when I was a kid. I was like, because the door goes down really, you know, like bam, and I was like,
does
the belt give the log power? I thought it only gave Diana power when she was away from the island, but evidently that's Wonder Log, you know, because it just knocked the crap out of that door. But it was awesome.
It was great. It is, it's Wonder Log for sure.
Yeah.
And so they blow down that door, just bam. You know, and it doesn't even like unpadlock. Like it's a double door, right? Padlocked in the middle, and both doors just come down at the same time.
Yeah.
So they come in, you know, and of course Wonder Woman is like, and the thing about Wonder Woman that's so awesome is like, whenever there's dire circumstances, she's just so cool about it. Like she knows things are going to be okay.
Yeah.
You know, and so when the kids come in there, she's delighted to see them. She's not necessarily relieved or, you know, like, oh my, I was so afraid. You know, she was just like, you guys are great. You know, she's just so happy to see them. So, and she, you know, she thanks them and she puts her belt back on, and then she, you know, she doesn't like say, you know, can you go find the key? She's just like, she just stretches those bars out of her way. And all the kids are like, whoa.
Yeah. And then she's like, let's go. She doesn't say, now you kids be good and go back to the ranch. No, she takes them with her, which is awesome. Like, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yes. So, so she gets back to the ranch. Yeah. Lance is on the couch recovering, and she's talking to Roy, and she's like, you know, or I think it's Roy that says, you know, we still can't figure out like how they're finding out all this information, and Lance finally confesses that he's the informant, and there's this amazing scene with him and Roy Rogers where he, you know, he just lets it all out. You know, he's like, you know, you're taking care of your new kids. I didn't think you needed me, and all this stuff, and they just have this great scene together. And I love the way Wonder Woman is involved in it. Like when I first saw it, I thought, well, maybe she's going to leave the room now and let these guys kind of hash it out. But she stays there partly because I think, I mean, this is what it feels like. Like as much as he's a loving father, this character that Roy's playing, he's still like a tough kind of cowboy guy, and it's not clear whether he's able to say everything that he's feeling.
Right.
And so she kind of fills in those gaps.
Needs a woman's touch, yeah.
Yeah. And so between the two of them, they kind of explain to Lance that, you know, his father still loves him and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's just a great scene.
You know what I don't understand is why he tipped his hand, or even how he knew about me being here.
Dad, there's something I gotta tell you. Wonder Woman saving my life like she did, it got me to thinking. I just can't keep on with what I'm doing. Lampkin runs the restaurant operation, and him and Dawson are partners.
How do you know all this?
Because I'm in on it. I'm their informant.
No, Jeff. Why?
It had to do with Charlie, Freddie, and the other kids. Before they came, it was always you and me.
You're jealous?
I just spent so much time with them. I needed you too.
Well, why didn't you say something? I mean, tipping those rustlers just to get even with me doesn't make sense.
You didn't do it to get even. Lampkin, you said you didn't care about me. But he did care. He took an interest in me. He didn't ignore me for a whole bunch of other kids.
Jeff, that bunch of other kids, they're war orphans. And they've lost both their parents. They're frightened children. They're bewildered. They're vulnerable. They needed a strong, fine man like your daddy. But that doesn't mean that your daddy loves you any less than he ever did.
Son, everything Wonder Woman said is just as true as it could be. Those children needed help. They were hurting bad. Needed a lot of attention. I thought you understood, but I guess you didn't. Walt Lampkin saw that, and he used it on you. What you did was wrong. But I guess I can understand why it happened. And I'm as much to blame for it all as you are.
No. No, it was me, Dad. I was really mixed up. I'm not anymore.
Son, when you get to feel better, we'll talk this all out. And there won't ever be any more misunderstandings between us.
So while that's happening, Steve, you know, luckily we've all kind of missed each other as we've gone back and forth to the ghost town. Because the bad guys bring Steve to the ghost town, not bothering to check and see if Wonder Woman's still in the cell, thank goodness. And they put him in the cooler.
Yeah.
And so he immediately tries to start trying to get out. But they go in another room and have a drink. Like that's how they're going to pass the time.
Yeah.
And so Wonder Woman comes back, and to Stuart Margolin, yeah, she does. And to Stuart Margolin's credit, there is that beautiful shot. It's the shot that you posted on your Facebook.
I love that shot. I love that whole. I can't even put it in words how much I love the last part of this episode. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great shot.
So yeah, she comes. They come over this sort of it's like a little mountain abutment that, and so there's just the sky behind them, and you see them all. It's kind of sneaking towards the ghost town, and that abutment sort of allows them to get on this roof, I think, and so they. Or Wonder Woman gets on the roof. The kids just kind of come around the side, and so she like jumps. I think one of the guys. There's like two guys there, and one of them I think runs, but she gets another one and sort of fights him to the ground, and then the kids run in and hog tie.
Mm-hmm.
They're like using their skills.
Don't worry, Wonder Woman, we got him.
That's right. Roy taught them how to, do knots and throw lassos and stuff. So they're using all their skills that they learned. And so she goes to break Steve out, and Roy, wherever he was probably coming up another side, because they all had to kind of sneak in. Mm-hmm. And Wonder Woman and Roy kind of arrive at the same time as Steve breaks himself out of the cooler. And so all three of them are there, and there's the three guys that are in there, the deputy and the cattle rustler and then the man,
the man.
Whoever the third guy is.
Yeah.
And so Steve fights the third guy, and Roy gets to punch out the deputy.
He gives a great punch, doesn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. And it's story-wise, it's great, because this is the guy that was stealing his kid away from him, basically.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I love that he gets to punch him.
Yeah.
And so they hustle these two guys into the cooler, and in the meantime, Wonder Woman is fighting the cattle rustler guy.
Yeah.
The guy from Dark Shadows, and he grabs like a garbage can to try to block her, and she takes it and slams it down on his head. It's like the old garbage can gag, Yeah. There's kind of this clang sound that happens, and then she stumbles him sort of over towards the cooler,
Yeah, and they get the humor of it too. They're laughing at the end of the scene with the guy in the can.
Yeah, yeah. So our good guys prevail, and it's great. Thanks to Wonder Woman
and Charlie,
and Charlie, and the guys, and probably
Babette. Or Babette, wherever she is.
Maybe she was like doing recon work. Maybe she was off camera, helping with something. You know, she's got the binoculars, and she's like telling people where to go. Maybe that's what happened.
She's their oracle. Yeah.
Yes. So anyway,
I wanted her to be in there somewhere.
She's got to be.
Yeah.
So that's it. And then Wonder Woman says
goodbye.
That's
not it. The best part's coming up.
Uh-oh. Well,
when she says goodbye to Charlie, man.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I mean, this is the last scene. She says goodbye to the kids, and then she, Charlie is off to the side, and he is sad.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't want her to leave, because he has made a friend. And she has made a friend. And he gives her this belt that he made, which I think is wonderful. I wasn't ready for that. I thought he was going to be kind of sad and moody, and then she was going to make him feel better about her leaving. But he made her this beautiful belt.
Mm-hmm.
And she promises to give him lasso lessons in exchange.
Yeah.
Well, Charlie, I have to go now.
But we're friends. And friends will always be friends.
That's right. I'll come back and see you as often as I can, okay?
Here, I made this for you so you'll always remember me.
Oh, Charlie, I'll never forget you. I promise. It's beautiful. And it fits. Thank you very much. Now I have to think of a gift to give to you. Is there anything you want special?
There is something.
Name it.
Would you teach me how to lasso with the railroad? Being a Navajo Indian carrying a rope is embarrassing.
Charlie Bright Eagle, you got a deal.
You mean it?
Sure.
You'll really teach me?
Yes, I'll really teach you. Right now, if you like.
I like.
Okay.
This scene, and I'm not ashamed to say it, every freaking time I watch it, I cry when she says goodbye to Charlie. That scene gets to me every time because when I was his age, and at that time that aired, and I was vicariously living through Charlie. I wanted to be a junior superhero and help Wonder Woman, and that final scene gets me every time, and it takes me back. I had a really happy childhood, mostly because of my parents, but also because of the stuff I loved. And this episode, like I said earlier, is like comfort food for me, and it just takes me back to my happy place. And that scene always gets me.
That's amazing. Yeah, and Charlie gets to share the final freeze frame with her, which doesn't happen very often. As far as I can tell, it's almost always just a solo shot of Wonder Woman, and it freezes on her smile.
Yeah.
But they smile together and get the shot together, which I think is great.
It's awesome. It's the best ending of an episode ever.
Yeah. So that is the Bushwhackers.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Great episode.
Great episode. A unique episode. Different from most of them, but definitely a great one.
Yeah, and after this, there aren't too many episodes after this season ends, and then we go into the present day. And so the chance of having another Western-style episode seriously diminishes after that move into the present day.
Well, it's funny you mention that, because I always wished that in the 70s episode there would be one where she goes back to the ranch and Charlie's in his 30s or 40s and he's running the ranch now and he has adopted kids and, so she went back to see Charlie.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That would be great.
Yeah. I just like I said before, I just love Charlie. I still want to be Charlie.
But you are Sean.
I am Sean.
And we're going to talk about you a little bit. So the way we met, let me go back to my first podcast episode where I'm kind of going through the history of Wonder Woman. I talked about this thing that happened in 1967. William Dozier, he was working with Batman wanted to do sort of a proof of concept, right, about Wonder Woman. He wanted to add her to kind of the pantheon that he was starting with Batman. And so there's this 5-minute film that you can see on YouTube. That's kind of his, it's referred to as the pilot. Like it's if you look it up on YouTube, I'll put a link for it. But it's Wonder Woman 1967 pilot or 1967 screen test. It's under a couple of different titles depending on who's posting it. But it's this wonderful actor, Ellie Wood Walker, and she's playing Wonder Woman. And it's so goofy. Like it's not the Wonder Woman we know. It's not, it's sort of somewhere in the weird Batman universe. And it's goofy and it's a satire, but it's the first time that live action Wonder Woman is on TV.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if this was ever broadcast, but
no, it was. It wasn't aired, but she is the first actress to portray Wonder Woman.
Yeah. So I'd seen that, and I'd talked about it, and then last year, Ellie Woods Walker was going to be at NostalgiaCon, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to go to NostalgiaCon. I'm gonna see if I can talk to her, and I got all psyched up in my head, and then it turned out I couldn't go.
Yeah.
But I thought, I could still interview her. I could talk to her, and so I started looking on the internet to see if I could find out more about her. And I found this great article, The Adventures of Ellie Wood Walker. I've been saying Woods Walker. It's Ellie Wood Walker. The first Wonder Woman called Maysville Home. And it was a terrific article, very thorough. Obviously written by somebody who definitely knows all their Wonder Woman stuff.
A little bit.
And so the byline says Sean McHugh, contributing writer. So I tracked you down.
Glad you did.
So tell me about that article.
Okay.
Like, how did it start?
The story's even more interesting than the article, because I had no idea that she was from Maysville. I'd heard about the pilot movie, or the pilot 5-minute movie from my brother Jim when I was a kid, because he taught me everything about superheroes, and he said, there's a Wonder Woman pilot that's kind of goofy. It's about the bankers of Batman, but he just read about it. He never saw it, but it's not even campy. It's just downright goofy. And, and I knew that there was a pilot out there somewhere, and then I finally saw it in the 90s. I got a bootleg copy that came with some bootleg Lynda Wonder Woman videos that I got before the DVDs came out. And I was like, well, this is kind of weird, but it's good. I mean, she's good. She's got good comic timing, she's cute,
Yeah.
And then I never gave it another thought. And then just a few years ago, my hometown has a You May Be From Maysville, if you remember, page on Facebook. And sure enough, there's this picture of that lady from the Wonder Woman pilot, and saying, she's from Maysville. I'm like, how have I lived in my hometown most of my life and not know that Wonder Woman was from my hometown? I had no clue. So I was just like freaking out. And then I got mad because somebody was commenting like, well, that was terrible of Lynda Carter to steal the role from her. I'm like, Lynda Carter was 14 when this was made. But yeah, I'm like, so I get on there defending Lynda. But then I want to know more about this lady, and sure enough, she's from my hometown. She went to the same high school I went to. She was the prom queen. She was all about Maysville until she left to New York to make it as an actress. So of course I wanted to know more about her, so I did some investigating like you did. But when after my Broomsticks books came out, my hometown paper asked me to write some pop culture articles, which were really fun to do. And I was thinking of something to do a couple of years ago, and it was Wonder Woman's 80th anniversary, and I was like, I should do a story on Ellie Wood Walker. She's from she's from Maysville. They'll love it,
Yeah.
So I did some investigating, some Nancy Druin and stuff, and I got a hold of her sister, and she got me in contact with her, and she gave me a beautiful interview over the phone, and she couldn't have been, she's in her 80s, I believe, but she was sharp as a tack and funny and sweet, and she gave a great interview, and I'm honored that the first Wonder Woman came from my hometown, but who knew? That's how I ended up with the story.
That is awesome. Yeah, and you helped me try to get in touch with her too, which I appreciate.
I wrote to her because I wrote to her and told her all about you and everything, and then I never heard anything. I gave her your info and everything, and I'm going to try. I'm going to try again because maybe it got lost in the mail or something. Because she was really sweet, and the interview she did with me was over the phone, so I'm sure she wouldn't have a problem doing one with you. So I'm going to try again.
Well, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
I'll do my best.
All right. Okay, and the other thing that we didn't talk about. So tell me about the Happy Trails Foundation.
Yeah, the Happy Trails Foundation was started by Roy Rogers and Dale Evans a while back, and I'll just read it because the Happy Trails Foundation carries on Roy's work with abused children. The foundation operates a safe haven for abused kids. They can house up to 44 kids, 10 to 16 years old, victims of child abuse who have been removed from their homes by Child Protection Agency or sent there by courts to Happy Trails for care and treatment services. And this has been going on for years. And I found this out when I like I said earlier about how Roy really did adopt war orphans and stuff. He was always doing stuff for kids. I mean, he's not just an icon. He's an American treasure. He was awesome.
Yeah. There's so much I didn't know about him.
Yeah, and here's another one, a real quickie. He grew up half an hour from my hometown, and I didn't know about it until a few years ago.
Wow.
And they have a Roy Rogers Museum in Portsmouth, Ohio, and they have a Roy Rogers Festival every year. And before he died, he would go to it every year. Half hour away from my hometown, I could have gone to meet Roy Rogers. My sister Pat would have taken me. My dad would have taken me. We didn't know. And it was only a half hour. So they say Maysville's like the center of the universe, and I believe it because everything revolves around that little town.
That's right. That's incredible.
Yeah, and if anybody's interested, they still do the Roy Rogers Festival every August in Portsmouth, Ohio.
Awesome. August, huh?
Yeah. And if you want to donate to the Happy Trails Foundation, it's happytrails.org. But yeah, Roy's still helping kids. It's great. That is
so cool. So we've talked a little bit about how old were you when you first saw Lynda Carter. You watched the show as it happened. I didn't even do that.
I remember distinctly where I was the first time I saw her in costume because it wasn't on the premiere date. It was the week before because I was watching the TV movie on ABC, The Night That Panicked America, which was about the Orson Welles radio show, the War of the Worlds radio show. It was a good movie too.
Right.
And I knew the following week there was going to be another Wonder Woman movie, but I thought, because my mom told me they're making another Wonder Woman movie, I'm like, okay, I thought it was going to be Kathy Lee Crosby again, which I have nothing against Kathy Lee Crosby. She's a beautiful woman and a good actress, but she just wasn't Wonder Woman to me,
Right.
But I planned on watching it, And so I'm watching The Night That Panicked America, and then a commercial comes on and says, next week on the ABC Friday Night Movie. And she ran by.
Yeah.
And then it showed a close-up of her, and I'm like, that's not Kathy Lee Crosby. I was like, that looks like Wonder Woman. That looks like she does in the comics. That's Wonder Woman, So I was like, it was wham, bam, alakazam, and I was in love. And so I couldn't wait. That week took like a month for me waiting for the following week to watch that.
That's amazing.
I loved it. And it just, I grew up I was the last of 6 kids. And I didn't have a superhero of my own, or at least a primetime superhero, because my older siblings had George Reeves in the 50s and Adam West in the 60s, and there was nothing on primetime in the 70s yet that was you had the $6 Million Man, but he wasn't a comic book hero. There was nothing, he had Super Friends on Saturday mornings, and that's how I was pretty much introduced to Wonder Woman. But I had none of my own, and then she came along, and I was like, she's mine. And like the opening credits describe it perfect, because it's like, 2 of my favorite things has always been TV and comic books, and it's like TV and comic books got together and gave me Lynda Carter. And the opening credits, when the cartoon turns real, it's like she literally leaped out of the comic book and said, here you go, Sean. Here's your girl. And I've been in love ever since.
Awesome.
And it's not just because, like, yes, she's smoking hot, and I had all the posters, but, and even though she was, you know, that was like her first leading role. She hardly did anything. She wasn't an accomplished actress yet, but she played it so sincerely and with so much heart. And every kid in America believed that's Wonder Woman, you know, so, I got hooked.
And so as you got older, and there was no Wonder Woman, you somehow wound up, jumping ahead, you wound up as an artist for Disney.
Yes.
And
well,
I really want to know, like, how that happened.
Well, like I said earlier, I'm from a small town in Kentucky, Maysville, Kentucky, and after I graduated college, I tried to find art jobs. I have an art degree, but I couldn't find anything full-time, yada, yada, yada. And I had a friend, Stephen Meadows, who was already working at Disney, and he kept saying, there's art jobs down here. But I hate hot weather. I didn't want to move to Florida. But I'm awfully glad I did, because I absolutely love the job, because I've been drawing every day full-time and making a living for 24 years, thanks to Disney and thanks to my friend Stephen. It's a dream job. I actually get to be an artist full-time, and that's what I've wanted to do all my life. I mean, aside from being obsessed with female superheroes, I also wanted to be Charles Schulz. And I always wanted to, since I was a kid, I knew I wanted to be an artist, but I didn't want to be like a fine artist in the museums. And so I wanted to create characters that would make kids happy, because I was so blessed in my childhood to have so many characters that bring me joy and still do, as you can tell by the way I talk about Wonder Woman, that I wanted to create something that would make kids happy. And I get to do that at Disney at work, but also I've got the children's books, which is the ultimate dream come true, and I'm a happy guy.
Now, how did the books come about?
The books came about because I was listening to an interview with Charles Schulz, and he says, if you're going to do a comic strip, you got to do something you like that you're not going to get sick of, because you're going to be doing it the rest of your life. And two of the things I loved was Peanuts and the TV show Bewitched. And I thought, what if I mixed them kind of together and came up with Broomsticks? It's Stamp and Pocky, two little 9-year-old witches who, it's basically like Bewitched. Nobody else knows that they're witches, and they go to a mortal school, that kind of thing. So it was heavily influenced by, it was mostly influenced by Bewitched and the Peanuts. But there is a little of the superhero thing, because in each, and I didn't think about this until I was thinking about, doing your show, that there was a little bit of the superhero that bled into it, because in each book, Stamp and Pocky used their powers to help people. And so I'm like, that. I think that comes from my being raised on good old-fashioned superheroes. It started off as a comic strip, and then the head editor at King Feature Syndicate really liked the strip, but he thought it would work. He sent me a personal letter saying he liked it, blah, 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 but he thought it would work better as a children's book. And that's when I asked my niece, Katie McHugh Parker, to help me write it, and we've got 6 books out now, and we're not nationwide well-known, but we're well-known in our area of hometown in Kentucky and Maysville, and we have a following, and there's kids who know who my characters are, and that means the world to me, and it's really fulfilling. If anybody out there listening has a dream to do something, do it, because, I mean, it's a pain to get there, but once you get there, it really feels good. I'm very blessed.
Yeah. And so just getting back to the art that you do for Disney, like what exactly is it that you do?
I'm a character artist. I'm in the park. I'm at Animal Kingdom, and I just, I'll give you a big head and turn you into Superman or Mickey Mouse or whoever.
Oh, nice. That is
and
cool.
I love it. And I'm still not sick of it. After 24 years, I'm still not sick of it, because you never know what the kids are going to want. I got a funny story to tell every day, because you never know what the kids are going to ask for, so it never gets old.
Can you think of any right now, like, something wild that a kid's asked for?
Oh, yeah. One of my favorites was a really sweet kid. He wanted a body, but he didn't know what kind of body he wanted. And I said, well, you could be Superman. You could be whoever. What do you like? And he goes, I like salt. Can you draw me eating salt? And I looked at his mom, and she goes, go ahead, he loves salt. And so I drew him with a salt shaker, and he loved it. So you never know what you're going to draw. Never a dull moment.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now,
and I get to draw a lot of Wonder Womans, too, so that's fun.
Oh, I'll bet. Yeah. Now, you're definitely a super fan. Like you've talked a lot about, your love for Wonder Woman, Bewitched, and I've seen, like, I saw a picture of on your Facebook where you've met Lynda Carter. Is that right?
That is right. I met Lynda Carter at a hospital, believe it or not.
Oh.
She, back in 2003, she was a spokesperson for IBS. I don't know if you remember the commercials. She was always promoting this IBS thing because her mother suffered from it.
Oh,
and
right. Yeah.
She took a tour of hospitals that year to talk about IBS, and I saw the little ad in the paper that Lynda Carter's going to be at the blah, blah, blah hospital to talk about IBS. I was like, I got to go, And it wasn't like at a Comic-Con or anything. It was at a hospital. So, and she spoke about IBS, and there was a doctor there with her, and he spoke about IBS. And I was worried she's going to leave after she talks. But the doctor said, after I'm finished talking, I'll be able to answer any questions. And then Lynda said, and I'll be here to answer any questions if anybody has any. I was like, oh, thank God. So I got to meet her. She was absolutely lovely, everything you would want her to be. She was kind and funny, and she got me. She didn't, go, oh, God, another fan, Because I was pretty much the only fan there. It was mostly nurses and patients of IBS. But the funniest part about it was the doctor there, he had no idea who Lynda was. He just thought she was an expert on IBS. So the nurse came over to me. She goes, Sean, could you show Dr. what's his name, your picture of Lynda? He doesn't know who she is, and he doesn't know anything about Wonder Woman. I said, oh, yeah, sure. So I went over and showed it to him. He goes, oh. So, yeah, that was my meeting of Lynda Carter at the local hospital. But she was lovely, kind, and I felt like Charlie. I didn't want her to leave.
Yeah, that's great. That's so awesome, and you got a great picture out of it. So
I got the pic. Well, I've written to her a lot. I've got 6 autographed pictures of her. But
really?
I got one in person. Yeah,
awesome.
But she was awesome.
You just posted. I don't know if this happened recently or if you just posted it or reposted it. But you also met some of the folks from Happy Days. Yeah.
The major one, well, I love them all, but Henry Winkler actually helped me get my book published indirectly. Well, actually directly.
Really?
Yeah, I love this story too. But like I said, I'm a blessed man. I love my life. I've been very lucky. But he writes children's books now. And I went to a book, he's been doing that early 2000s. And I went to a book signing of his, and of course, I wanted him to sign a picture of Fonzie, too. But I drew a picture of him as the Fonz meeting his character from his book and gave it to him in a manila envelope. And, he looked at it, loved it, said he's going to hang it in his office or whatever. I didn't think nothing of it. He's just a nice guy, But in the envelope, I also sent the first chapter of my book and told him how I had been trying to find a publisher for years, and I said my goal was to find a publisher by the age of 40. If I don't find, I'm going to give up. Do you have any advice? Blah, blah, blah. I thought it was worth a shot, Yeah. And then a week later, he calls me. Henry Winkler calls me, and I'm like, I'm shocked. Yeah, I didn't pick up the answering machine. Got it, and then of course I knew the voice. He goes, "Hello, this is Henry Winkler from Mr. McHugh," and I jumped on the phone. I'm like, I'm here. And he was so cool, no pun intended, but he was cool because he goes, now don't get excited. I'm not calling to tell you I'm going to publish your book. That's not what I do, but I don't want you to give up. He goes, I have a question for you. Do you believe in your book? Do you believe in Broomsticks? I went, yes, sir, I do. He goes, then you cannot give up. You have to keep trying. And he starts giving me all this advice, like change the title and send it to the same publishers you sent it to before. He says publishers are fickle. If they're in a bad mood, they'll hate everything. If they're in a good mood, they might like it, And I did everything he said, and 2 years later, it was just a year later, either a year or two later, we had a publisher. We had a traditional publisher, and I was going to give up, and I owe it all to the Fonz.
That is amazing.
Yeah. So yeah.
So speaking of the book, if people want to buy it, I'll put a link on my show notes.
Mm-hmm.
But where would they go to look for it?
IndiePlanet.com. It's they sell mostly comic books, so if people that are into comic books will like the independent comic books, but ours is a children's book, but it's the same company. The publisher that we had before with the chapter books, they're no longer in business, so their latest 3 books are at IndiePlanet.com.
All right, and if people want to just look you up on social media, is there a place they can do that?
Yeah, Facebook's the easiest. I mean, you can find me, and there's also a Broomsticks page. It's just called Broomsticks, and there's also a Broomsticks fan club on Facebook. They're both on Facebook, so it's pretty easy to get in touch with me.
Well, Sean, it's been so awesome to talk to you.
It's been so awesome to talk to you. I am grateful for this because, I get to talk about the stuff I love, and stuff. You ask the same kind of questions I do. I enjoyed this very much. If I could, before we go, can I give a shout-out to, talking about how the part in Wonder Woman where the kids helped save. I want to give out a shout-out to my fellow Teen Titans when I was a kid, when that episode aired, to Roger, Rodney, Chip, Todd, and Mark. So, okay, I did that. Thank you. But
awesome.
We tried to be like Charlie in the game.
That is cool. We need more kids like that.
We do. We were good kids. We tried. We just wanted to help save the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Sean, thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been pretty awesome for me. I mean, it's just, usually when I talk about Wonder Woman, I'll go, here he goes again. So I got a chance to do what I love. So thank you very much, Stan. This has been a dream come true.
Well, we'll do it again next season. Start thinking about, your favorite episode next season. We'll do it.
All right, I will. Thank you so much.
All right, buddy.
All right.
All right, take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
A big thanks again to my friend Sean McHugh, a man who speaks my language. Now be sure to check out Sean's awesome Broomsticks books. The links will be in the show notes. And if you are a cosplayer who would like to be a guest on the show, please throw me an email. The email link, the show notes, all our social media links are at WonderWomanWednesdays.com. There you will also find links to other podcasts I like to listen to, and I'm listening closely to my friend Dan Budnick at Eventually Supertrained because I'm a guest on his show talking about the great Lynda Carter and Lonnie Anderson series, Partners in Crime. And if you listen at press time, I believe in the very next episode, I will have gotten my microphone fixed. Oh, technology, I hardly knew you. Listen, we have an amazing guest coming up for the last episode of the season, and a couple of special episodes that will jangle your spurs. Until then, my friends, be kind whenever possible, and as you know, it is always possible